About 8 o'clock, so we're going to be getting started shortly. I thought I would do some introductions to kill some time as folks continue to join us. First, I want to express our gratitude to Sharon Danosky and her team for putting together this very timely, very fast series. Second, I'd like to express my thanks to all of the, especially board members who have joined us today. This is an important conversation. This is an important time for boards to be very involved with their organizations, and for you to take the time this morning to understand what that role looks like is important to us. And we're here to support you in any way that we can. We do have a board chair roundtable coming up on April 28th. So any board chairs or rising chairs, just the seated chair or the rising chair, the heir apparent, welcome to join us. You can do so by emailing me, Jackie Downing. I'm at jdowning@cfgnh.org at the Community Foundation. You can also find my information on our website. I'm very happy to be working with the Valley Community Foundation today to bring this series to you all. There's lots of information that I think we should get to, and Sharon, I don't want to take any more time, so I'm going to turn it right over to you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I really appreciate it, and welcome everybody. Good to have you all with us today. I'm Sharon Danosky, president of Danosky Associates. A little about my background. I have been working in the nonprofit sector for almost 40 years. 16 of those was as a member of the senior administration for several hospitals. I was also vice president for a $55 million human service organization. While I've never lived through a pandemic, I have experienced a number of crises in all of the organizations where I have worked. 12 years ago in 2008, during a different kind of crisis, I started my own business, Danosky Associates. Excuse me. I am very grateful to the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation for making it possible for us to spend some time together this morning. They have been doing a yeoman's work in helping area nonprofits cope and work through COVID-19. And I am so grateful for the opportunity they have given me to present to you. And I am extremely grateful for all of they have done and for how quickly they have moved to get resources where they need to be. It truly is the community foundations and the nonprofits who I feel are the backbone and safety net of our society. And Jackie, I want to say kudos, and Val, kudos to both of you for all you have done. Moving on, there's a few housekeeping details to keep in mind. Everyone's devices are muted to diminish background. You'll find a bar up top where you can ask a question or respond to a poll. I almost feel like I don't need to do these anymore because so many of us are familiar with this, but I will just go through these to make sure that we're all aware of it. We have several polls we will be asking as we go through the webinar, and we will be asking you to fill in on the Q&A bar any thoughts or comments. I would ask if you could to use the Q&A more than the chat. It's easier for me to toggle back from the Q&A to the seminar, and sometimes I meet things in the chat bar. So if you could kind of put your questions, and I'm free to answer questions throughout this webinar in the Q&As, that'd be great. And we will be recording this and we'll make it available to the foundation along with the slides. To get us started, I want to take a poll. Look at what you're wearing today. Have you worn something you're wearing now more than once this week? Look at that. 63% of you said yes. All right. Thank you for that. And now I'd like to ask, what is that article, if you'd like to share it with us? Use the Q&A bar, please. We just like to have a little bit of fun as we open this up, kind of lighten the mood a little bit, and get you practicing using these. All right, we got a few answers. Sweatshirt, jeans, slippers, a sweater, Ah, yeah, I have my favorite comfy sweater that I wear many times during the week. Favorite shirt, is it really standing up by itself, Alan? Thank you so much for answering this. This is a lot of fun. Now, a little more serious poll. First question, how many of you are on the front lines providing some type of human service support? Transportation, direct care, childcare, health, shelter, food? And how many of you are what I call providing comfort and moral support? Libraries, museums, symphonies? All right. It looks like the majority of you are providing comfort and moral support. Thank you. And my next question is, how many are executive directors, development directors, or people responsible for fundraising, board members, other? Excellent. The majority are members of the board. I want to say an extra special thank you for making the time to be here this morning. Really appreciate it. And executive directors and development folks and everyone, thank you very much for being here today. The COVID-19 pandemic is more than just a health crisis. It has had a ripple effect impacting all of us and our work. As the world responds to this new threat, many nonprofits are struggling with how to help their communities stay safe and well, while also trying to endure the crisis themselves. During this crisis, every board and every board member should be stepping up to help the nonprofit they serve. While conventional wisdom might suggest letting the professionals handle the day-to-day, there is a significant role board members can and should play. What is the board's role in a time of crisis? How can the board and staff work together right now? How can boards support their executive directors more than giving an atta-girl or atta-boy? Every board member should be asking, what does your nonprofit need from you right now? And what will it need as this pandemic continues and eventually recedes? Executive directors and CEOs are on the front line of this pandemic. Whether you're an organization providing direct care or an organization that is providing what I like to refer to as comfort or support. It is a difficult and challenging time navigating these waters. As an executive director, you are trying to figure out how to transform your programs virtually, how to keep your staff engaged or protected if they are on the front lines. You might be delivering food, transforming shelters, sheltering in place with vulnerable clients, carrying out a whole host of day-to-day activities delivered in ways you probably never imagined. What you're not doing or not able to do is to take time to look 3, 4, 8, or even 12 weeks ahead. You're hoping that the fundraising will sustain you. During the nights when you're having a little time off, you're probably applying for loans or creating appeals. I say stop. This is the time you need to turn to your boards for real help. And board members, this is the time where you can play a significant role. Boards are in a very unique and I think fortuitous position to be able to take the time and ask some key questions such as, what aspects of this situation could affect our organization now and in the future? Where are the organization's greatest vulnerabilities? Are there opportunities we're not exploring? Are we reaching people who need our help the most? How can we prevent worst-case scenarios from occurring, and what are they? What questions from the press would we least like to face? If you have not already done so, your board chair should call a virtual meeting to assess the overall situation, then discuss and assign the following: assessing and managing risk, developing and evaluating your business continuity plan, evaluating financial scenarios, reviewing, adapting, or developing policies, implementing a communications plan, helping to raise money, advocating on behalf of your organization, and supporting your CEO, executive director. I will speak to each of these in details. First, assessing and managing the organization. Boards should be taking the pulse of their organization. By now, you have probably decided to reduce certain services, possibly eliminated others, postponed some events that were planned, and are providing a number of services or programs in a different way. Boards should take a pause and ask the question, are we doing the best thing possible? How is what we're doing working? Did we miss something? Or is it working better than ever and should be expanded? If so, then how? Ask the hard questions and explore the answers. What are the financial risks you are facing, and are there ways that it can be mitigated? What are the risks to your staff, clients, and volunteers? Have those risks been mitigated? What if this continues for another 2, 3, 4 months or longer? Will the risk change? What if your key employees contract the virus? Is there a plan in place? Are you meeting the needs of diverse populations at a time when they are most vulnerable? Not all of these questions will be able to be answered, and none of these can be answered with a great deal of certainty. However, the questions should, and in fact must be raised, and contingencies should be discussed. The mission of your organization is not frivolous. It was founded for a reason. It was founded because there was a need. As a board, it is your responsibility to understand and manage the risks to ensure your mission continues and endures. Creating a what-if scenario can be extremely helpful. I am also sure there are members on your boards who have this skill set, who probably use this expertise in their daily jobs. Now is the time to put it to use for the charity they care about. Once you have taken the time to consider all these factors, you need to put a business continuity plan to paper. I addressed this a couple of webinars ago, and if you want to brush up on any of the details, it's on the foundation's websites, and you can access it by going there. Your BCP doesn't have to be a multi-page document. You can write it in a PowerPoint if you want. You can create an outline with notes, but you need to have something on paper that you can refer to. In many ways, it will be a living document as you gather additional information. Then your plan can be updated and renewed. Here is basically what the plan should continue. Programs and services that must continue, the list of must-dos from paying payroll to paying insurance, communications plan, and finally, a reemergence plan. If you want more information on creating a business continuity plan, you can touch base with Val or Jackie to direct you to that website. Financial scenario planning. Financial resources and access to capital are a concern during the best of times. Now, the need to understand the flow of revenue and expenses is more critical than ever. This role is perfect for your finance committee. And if you don't have a finance committee, then ask a few board members, and you can even invite someone with financial expertise who isn't on your board to work within the committee structure. It doesn't need to be exclusively board members. It needs to be people with skills. In fact, many people, while they're sheltering at home, might welcome the opportunity to do something meaningful for an organization that is trying to function and serve its mission during this time. Tap into people's generosity. Financial sages can dig into how this pandemic has affected your organization's bottom line, evaluate its revenue, assets, etc. They should look at what the short-term and long-term ramifications of this pandemic will be on the overall financial health of your organization. And they should do some what-if scenario planning. Certain things might look particularly scary right now. Or if you received the PPP or your fundraising is doing really well, things might look particularly rosy. But whatever is happening now, one thing is certain: it is not sustainable. Will you have the resources to reemerge successfully? And will you be able to sustain operations 6 months or a year from now? We all know there are a number of SBA loans out there with a new round of funding about to emerge. It is very difficult for a busy executive director to sift through these and figure out how to apply. And the skills needed to be a successful executive director are not the same skills needed to evaluate these alternatives. This is not what you hired your executive director to do. This is where the board can serve the organization very well by helping to evaluate the options and assist in filing some of these applications. How many boards have reviewed your organization's policies in the past year? How many of your policies are up to date? You've reviewed them within the past year. Okay, excellent. 67, 2/3 of you have said yes, you've reviewed them in the past year. How many of you have scrambled to put policies in place to cover some of the contingencies that you are now experiencing, such as remotely working from home policies? All right. About split pretty much 50-50, 46, 46, 44, 56. I won't ask the next question, which would be, how many of you haven't even thought about this? I believe I hear a faint sense of concern or panic emerging through the Zoom connection. Don't panic, but you should act. Your policies protect you, and if they are not in place, they cannot protect you. For example, how many organizations have policies about remotely working from home that might address such questions as, am I required to provide special accommodations or resources to a remote worker? What rules am I allowed to enforce to ensure workers are actually working? What if a client or volunteer was diagnosed with COVID-19? What procedures are in place? Do new policies need to be developed that weren't considered prior to this situation? And most important, are the policies protecting your staff, your clients, your volunteers, and the organization itself? This is a great opportunity to enlist someone on your board who has human resource expertise, and even lawyers on your board to help and ensure that policies or existing policies are reviewed, making sure that you're covered. Also consider what policies might need to be considered in a post-COVID-19 world. Communications and having a communications plan. I have to confess, communications is one of my sweet spots. I want to give you a little perspective. Approximately 20 years ago, I was the vice president at a hospital charged with marketing, planning, and development. It was a Catholic hospital run by an order of nuns, not the church. And at the time I was running an endowment campaign, when I got a call Saturday night from the CEO, He had been fired, and I was asked to meet with the board the next morning to develop a communication strategy. That was Saturday. By Tuesday, the CFO was fired, and we learned that we had 1/2 day's cash on hand for a hospital. Needless to say, the endowment campaign was shut down. Non-essential personnel were, quote unquote, eliminated, and we sought to merge with another hospital across town. I won't go into the long details. At the end of the day, it all worked out. The hospital affiliated with a healthcare system, not the hospital across town, and continued to serve as a Catholic hospital for many years. And we retained all endowment support. But communications during this approximate 9-month period of time was essential. It was critical to retaining staff, to retaining the doctors, the patients, the donors, support from elected officials. The plan was formal, structured, and board members played a critical role. What is your plan? Who is your chief spokesperson? If the media called several members on your board, would everyone give the same message? Would that be the same message that your executive director is giving? If you have a communications person on staff, that person certainly coordinate the plan. However, if that communications person is deployed to providing frontline services for a food pantry or a shelter, or you don't have a communications director, who is filling that void? This, again, is where board members can be enormously helpful. Next week's webinar will be on developing and implementing a communications plan. However, if there is someone on your board with this skill set and expertise, then enlist their help and ask them to coordinate the messaging and the flow. Several board members can help out with this. However, only one member of the board should serve as primary spokesperson, and all communications should be directed to that person. It's usually the chair or president of the board, but if the chair or president isn't comfortable, he or she can designate someone else. But if you designate someone else, you need to make sure that that person is your point person. All right, next poll. How many board members have been making phone calls to your donors in the past few weeks? All right, about 42% have. Yay, good for you. 58% have not. Can we talk? Fundraising does not take a hiatus during a crisis. In fact, it is more critical than ever to raise funds right now. Again, here is where the board can really make a difference. For those who are providing direct support and need funds now to deliver your service, you should be calling your major donors and asking them if they can help. Executive directors can prepare a cheat sheet, which should be short and direct. How are you doing? What are you doing? What help do you need? List the specifics. Organizations that have been doing this are receiving huge financial support. One home healthcare organization I work with raises a little over $1 million a year. In 3 weeks, they raised over $500,000 a year, half of what they raise annually. And it keeps growing. Not corporate support, not foundation support, but just by speaking with their individual donors. All organizations should be calling their major donors right now. And as board members who should be doing that. Even if you are not on the front lines, you are providing service for those who care about their mission. Share what you're doing, check in, and make sure your donors are okay. Are they receiving your e-blasts? Are they receiving your e-newsletters? Are they getting the information that they want? Are they receiving live streams from you? Is there something they would like to see or learn or hear that you can provide and that you haven't? You always refer to your donors as members of your family. I've heard that so many times, and I think it's true. This is the time to treat them like family. They are home and they would love to hear from you. The webinar we conducted last week went into detail about how to do this. And again, Val and Jackie would be happy to share it. But what I want to stress now is that board members should own this role. Staff can help. They can provide you with a list of donors or even help you craft the message. But board members should be making the phone calls. If you reach out to donors during this time, they will be there for you when things begin to stabilize, and many of them will offer to help you out. So Peter says to me, took your advice last week, had board members contact donors this past week. And I heard from someone else who said their donors were so happy to hear from them and so happy to hear that they were responding. And some of them, they said, even said, wow, you know, you're the only charity I've been hearing from. Thank you so much. So call. Just pick up the phone and call as if you were talking to a member of your family. How are you? How are you doing? You know, is everything okay? Advocacy, advocate, advocate, advocate. This is something that board members are very well equipped to do. Call your mayors, town selectmen, legislators, governor, Congress, all need and want to hear from you. Let them know how you're doing. What services are you providing? How can you help on a local basis? Are there things that your local officials need where you might be able to help with? Or are they even aware that you are providing those services? Conversely, are there things town governments could do that could increase your effectiveness or help in any way? Can they remove obstacles or help get the word out? I get a weekly robocall from my town, letting me know what is available. Does your town have a robocall? Are your services listed on their robocall? It's also critically important that they understand the role of your mission and how you have fulfilled that mission if you receive support from your local town government. The same is true for your state representatives and your congressional delegation. Communicating the value and vital role you are performing now will help your elected officials understand the resources you need now, and it will go a long way in securing future funding. The last thing of the list of things that should be topmost is supporting your executive directors. Executive directors probably have the most difficult job right now. When you think of the staff, constituencies, resources, they are all juggling. And some are seeing extraordinary hardship and challenges among those who use their service, or even among those who were critical to providing services, such as their own employees or contractors, artists or musicians. This is a challenging time for everyone. But executive directors are, for the most part, on the front lines of this challenge. So call your executive director weekly, every few days, and just ask, how are you doing? And take the time to listen. He or she or they just might need a sounding board. Board chairs, this is a role that you can play really well and would be very happy to do so. So this all sounds great, but how do you put it all together? I want to ask, how many boards have activated what I'm referring to as a COVID-19 task force or something similar? All right. About 20% of you have one, and 78% do not. So I've presented a lot of information in many ways where board members can play a really critical role. However, every board member does not need to do everything. You might want to consider establishing a COVID-19 task force, or your entire board can act as the COVID-19 task force at this time and really defer routine board meetings, because we know nothing is routine right now, and to simply report out information as if business is normal is really not a good way to proceed. The task force should be filled with members who have specific expertise in the areas I've mentioned during this webinar. If you don't have that expertise, recruit it and ask people outside of the board to serve on the task force. That's the beauty of task forces. As I mentioned earlier, people really want to help in any way possible right now. Take your standing committees with taking on priorities brought about by COVID-19. Finance should be focusing on assuring that the resources are available now and later. Development committees, you guys should be deployed to making phone calls to your donors and making sure every board member is making their calls. If you have a mission impact committee or mission validation or any kind of committee that looks at your programs, they should be evaluating which programs are critical and which may be deferred. They should also be evaluating how to better reach diverse and vulnerable populations. Finally, these types of decisions should not have to be made by your executive director alone. Your executive director should be an integral part of this task force. Your executive director should be sharing with you what's happening on the front line and how, the gaps are being plugged. Same role day to day. But they don't have the free time to develop the long-term plans and the long-term contingencies and evaluating the long-term ramifications on your finances. They shouldn't have to come up with that and then come to you for approval. You should be in there with them doing this. Board members, you need to take some of this off of the executive director's plates. But to help the executive directors in thinking through critical decisions, looking for alternatives, and sharing the risks and responsibilities. The best way of working through these times is really by creating a virtual war room. And I would even call it that. We're having our virtual war room meeting. The war room is a concept that works very well in these circumstances. And with Zoom or other virtual meeting platforms, this is something that can be done so easily. You can even use programs like Slack so that you can share what you're doing together and you can come together easily. Depending on your organization, you can meet once a day, once every few days, once a week. It really depends on you and your organization. I'm not really a fan of every day unless it's only for 10 or 15 minutes. But I would not suggest either meeting less than once a week because things are changing and shifting so fast. We're into week 6 of this pandemic. I know it seems like week 36, but it's week 6. And how much has changed since that first week we sheltered at home? You want to make sure you understand the changing circumstances, the changing needs, and the changing scenarios so that you can pivot quickly and pivot clearly. I mentioned one of my hospital experiences earlier. We had the war room. It was a number of years ago, and so it was an actual war room. We actually had a conference room set aside for this purpose. We would meet early in the morning and last thing in the evening. In the morning, we would outline what we were trying to undertake, and in the evening, update on the status, what was working, what was not working. As it was a hospital, we had staff that could address a lot of the issues I mentioned, but board members were always there. They were always involved. They were always welcomed and frequently helped us to move obstacles from lines of credit to advances from state coffers. They would pose questions that we had not thought of because we had an insular view of what we were doing. They provided perspective that ranged from the supply side to logistics to political. Your executive directors right now are some of the best tacticians there are. And board members, you can be great strategists. You need both to power through a crisis like this. So one final thought, revisit and this is about your mission. Revisit your mission as you go through this. Before every virtual meeting, I recommend someone reads your mission out loud. Before every virtual meeting, before every board meeting, read your mission out loud. It is so important that you stay really tightly connected with your mission and what it says during this time. Because every decision you make needs to reinforce your ability to continue to serve your mission. If you eliminate this program, how will it support your mission? I had a question from someone about a week ago saying that they were doing a lot of things really ancillary to their mission. Should they stop doing it? Some questions I just can't quickly answer in a Q&A, and so he emailed me. And when I looked at the things that he was doing, he really was staying within the core of his mission. But what he was doing was trying to reach out and make sure every vulnerable population was being reached out, was being contacted, was being met. He couldn't provide his mission in one central place as they usually do, but he was making that extra effort to make sure that they were really reaching out. So if you eliminate this program, how does it support your mission? If you add different programs, or is this program you are continuing with the resources required, is it essential to your core mission? This might be the time when you're really saying, we really love this program, but how essential is it to our core mission? There will be some difficult decisions, difficult decisions that you as board members will need to make, not only today or next week or next month, but over the course of the next several months and even the next year. And I think this is the time, board members, that you really need to look at what is meant by your mission to make sure that you are as inclusive as possible and that you are addressing some of the vulnerabilities that this crisis has brought forth in our society. Whatever decisions you may have to make, they all need to be well aligned with your mission. And it's a time to really get back to what your mission means. It has been said many times over the past few weeks, we're in this together. And only by working together, being in the midst of what is going on, will your organization come out stronger. Every board member was recruited because of their unique skills, talent, expertise, and connections. This is the time to draw on that unique ability. And board members, this is your time to shine. Because at the end of the day, if we are all in this together, then we will reemerge together stronger than before. I'd like once again to thank the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, and the Valley Community Foundation for making this time together possible. And to every one of you, thank you for what you do. You are keeping us safe and well, providing food, shelter, transportation, education, comfort, joy, and entertainment. You are all the safety net that keeps our communities going, and even in this most difficult time. You have my heartfelt gratitude and best wishes for a better tomorrow. We are all in this together. Thank you. And I'd now like to open it up for questions. So anonymous attendee, could you elaborate on how reducing or cutting a program designed to work toward a mission could actually support the mission? Perhaps an example would be helpful. I think that's an excellent question, and it's not an easy question to answer. But if you offer a variety of different programs, then taking the time to evaluate how each program is aligned with the mission can make a significant difference in your decision-making process. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this, but we often perform what we call a mission margin matrix, which is a quadrant that evaluates your financial viability, and it also evaluates your impact, your mission impact. And the impact is really based on 7 different criteria. The first criteria is how strongly aligned with your mission is that program. The second is, how well do you execute it? The third is, how large a scale are you serving? Are you serving a lot of people, or are you serving a few people with a great deal of depth? Scale, depth, leverage. How well can you leverage this program to get people into other programs that have higher mission impact? Are you filling a community need? Or are there other people in your community who are doing a similar or same service? And finally, does this program build a community around it? If you take each of those programs that you're talking about and evaluate them on those 7 criteria on a scale of 1 to 4, there will be certain programs that will rise up higher in terms of its impact and other programs that will not. And those programs that are lower in impact should be evaluated because are they drawing resources from those programs which have a greater impact? And if you send me an email at info@danosky.com, I will send you those 7 criteria for you to look at. Oh, I'm sorry, my dog is barking. Usually I will just say, Alan, this is the first morning that she's really been difficult because usually she just runs outside, runs upstairs, and doesn't come back down and bother me until the end of this webinar. And, and no, I don't need to let her out. She has the back door open, so she'll go out when she wants to. I'm sorry if that's been a bother, but thank you very much. Yeah, I have pets, you know, I don't have children, but I do have pets. Are there any other questions? Are there any other questions? And Anonymous, was that helpful? This is a really difficult time, and for board members, you really, you know, I would even have you take a moment and say, you know, during one of your board members, really read the mission and go around the room and say, you know, what does this mission mean to each of you? And have board members talk about the mission, because the more you can talk about your mission, the more you will understand whether or not it is aligned with what you need to do. So just to say thank you very much. Our time together is done. Appreciate all your questions. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. If you want to ask me any questions offline, my email is info@danosky.com. Thank you, be well, and thank you again for all you're doing. And Val, Jackie, Community Foundation for Greater New Haven, Valley Community Foundation, thank you very, very much.